So guys, Hannah had a little bit of an accident. Yeah, so we won't go into detail what actually happened, but as you can see, it is damage to the TT, pretty bad. Back wheel, this completely snapped.
The story of Matt Armstrong and his car rebuild journey did not start with luxury cars, million-dollar projects, or internet fame. It started in a very simple way, with a damaged car and a normal life that looked nothing special from the outside. Back in 2015, a crashed Audi TT became the turning point that no one could predict it would change everything. At that time, Matt was not a full-time YouTuber or a well-known car builder. He was just someone trying to manage everyday life, working 2 jobs and trying to build a future step by step. His routine was exhausting. Started with a full-time job from 9 to 5, and then moving straight to a restaurant job in the evening from 6 to 10. There was almost no free time, no luxury, and no sign that anything big was about to happen. Life was completely focused on work, survival, and repeating the same cycle every day. But everything changed when a crashed Audi TT entered the picture. Most people in that situation would have simply gone through insurance, taken the payout, and moved on without thinking twice. That is the normal path because repairing a damaged car often feels like too much effort, too much cost, and too much risk. However, Matt made a different decision. Instead of letting the system handle everything, he decided to try something himself. He wanted to repair the car with his own hands. At first, it was not about building a brand or starting a YouTube career. It was just curiosity, learning, and the challenge of seeing if something broken could be brought back to life. Alongside this decision, he also picked up a camera and started recording the process. That small action, just filming a repair project, became the most important decision of his entire journey to the beginning. The videos were not planned in a professional way. There was no perfect script, no cinematic setup, and no idea that millions of people would one day watch. It was raw, simple, and completely real. A damaged car, tools, mistakes, problem solving, and progress step by step. But something unexpected started happening. People began watching these videos, not because they were flashy, but because they were real. They could see every mistake, every delay, and every moment where things did not go as planned. Unlike polished content where everything looks perfect, this was different. It showed struggle, learning, and patience. That honesty became the reason viewers stayed. Instead of skipping parts, they started coming back for more. As time passed, this simple idea slowly turned into something much bigger. Matt naturally developed a style without even planning it. He did not hide problems or cut out difficult moments. If a part did not fit, he showed it. If a repair went wrong, he showed it. If something took longer than expected, he showed that too. This created a strong connection with the audience because they could relate to it. It was not just about fixing cars. It was about the journey of fixing something that seemed impossible at first. The satisfaction came not from perfection, but from progress. When the car finally started coming together, it felt earned. It was not staged or artificial. It was a result of real effort and real problem solving. This early stage of the journey is important because it set the foundation for everything that came later. Without that first Audi TT project, there would be no Bugatti rebuilds, no supercar controversies, and no massive online audience. It all started from a simple decision. Instead of giving up on a broken car, try to rebuild it and record the process. That one choice slowly changed from a personal experiment into a public journey, and then into a full storytelling format that people around the world now follow. What makes it even more interesting is that none of it was planned for fame. It was built step by step through consistency, honesty, and curiosity. And from that small beginning, a completely new path in automotive content was born as the Audi TT project slowly gained attention. Something very important started to change in Matt Armstrong's life, even though he did not fully realize it at the time. What began as a simple repair experiment was now becoming a consistent content journey that people were actually following week after week. At first, the audience was small, mostly people who were interested in cars or DIY repair work. But what made this different from normal car videos was not the car itself, but the way the story was being told without even trying to make a story. Every video showed real progress, real mistakes, and real problem solving. This made viewers feel like they were part of the process, instead of just watching a finished result. Slowly, the channel started to grow, not through viral luck, but through trust and consistency. During this time, Matt's life was still very far from the image of a successful YouTuber. He was still working long hours, still managing normal jobs, and still dealing with the same financial pressure that most people face when trying to build something new. The key difference was that now he had something growing in the background. After finishing work at his main job, he would go straight into working on the car project and filming it. This created an extremely demanding routine, where almost every hour of the day was filled with work in one form or another. But instead of slowing down, this pressure actually pushed the content forward. Because there was no perfect setup, everything stayed real, and that realism became the strongest part of the channel. As more videos were uploaded, viewers started to recognize a pattern. It was not just about one car being fixed. It was about a process that repeated itself with different challenges. A damaged car would come in. It would look worse than expected. Problems would appear during repair. Parts would not fit. Delays would happen. And then slowly, step by step, the car would come back to life. This cycle created a very strong sense of satisfaction for viewers. Even if they were not experts in cars, they could understand effort, patience, and progress. That emotional connection is what made the channel stand out from many other automotive creators who focused only on polished results or quick transformations. Another important factor in this growth was honesty. Many creators tend to hide failures or only show the best moments, but Matt's approach was different. He showed when things went wrong, when repairs failed, and when time and money were being wasted. This built a sense of trust between him and the audience. People started to believe what they were seeing because nothing felt staged. This trust is extremely important in long-form content because viewers do not just come for entertainment. They come for reliability. They want to feel like they are watching something real, not something scripted for attention. As the channel continued to grow, the projects also slowly started to get more ambitious. The cars were no longer just simple damaged vehicles. They started becoming more complex, more expensive, and more technically challenging. This shift did not happen suddenly, but it was natural. As the audience grew, expectations grew as well. Bigger projects meant bigger risks, but also bigger rewards in terms of engagement and interest. Each new build brought a new layer of difficulty, and this is where the tone of the channel began to change. It was no longer just about fixing cars. It was about pushing limits, solving problems that were not always meant to be solved outside of factory environments, and exploring how far independent rebuilding could actually go. This transition phase is what set the stage for everything that came next. Without this steady growth period, the later supercar builds would not have had the same impact. The audience would not have been prepared for the scale of what was coming. More importantly, Matt himself was now experienced enough to handle much bigger challenges. What started as a simple Audi TT rebuild was now evolving into something much larger, a real-world experiment in modern car repair limits, where engineering, software, and manufacturer control all began to play a major role in what could and could not be done as the channel grew and the builds became more ambitious. The turning point came when the focus shifted from normal damaged cars to some of the most complex and expensive machines ever made. This is where the story of Matt Armstrong's rebuild journey stopped being just about fixing cars and started becoming something much bigger, something closer to a real-world experiment in modern automotive limits. The clearest example of this shift is the Bugatti Chiron Sport project, a build that instantly changed the level of attention, pressure, and debate surrounding everything he did. This was no longer a simple repair. It was a multi-million-euro supercar, one of only a small number ever made, and a machine that represents the absolute top level of automotive engineering. When a car like this gets damaged, the stakes are completely different, not just financially, but also in terms of responsibility, safety, and manufacturer control. The Bugatti Chiron Sport is not just rare, it is extremely complex. It is designed with advanced systems, software restrictions, and strict engineering standards that are meant to ensure performance and safety at the highest level. Because of this, repairing such a car is not the same as fixing a normal vehicle. Even if the physical damage can be repaired, there are still hidden layers of software, calibration, and factory-level systems that must all work together perfectly. This is where the rebuild became more complicated than anything seen before in Matt's previous projects. It was not just about replacing parts or fixing panels. It was about understanding whether a car like this can even be restored outside of its original manufacturer environment. What made the situation even more intense was the public attention around it. Once the idea of repairing a Bugatti outside official channels came into discussion, the internet reacted strongly. People started debating whether it should even be allowed, whether it was safe, and whether it respected the engineering standards of the brand. The story became bigger than the car itself. It turned into a conversation about ownership, control, and the limits of independent repair. At this point, the build was no longer just a YouTube project. It was now part of the global discussion about how modern supercars are designed and who really has the right to rebuild them once they are damaged. As the rebuild progressed, things became even more interesting because the car actually started to show signs of life again after months of work. When the Bugatti finally started and moved under its own power, it created a massive shift in how people viewed the project. Before that moment, most of the discussion was focused on doubt and criticism. People questioned whether it would ever work, or whether it should even be attempted in the first place. But once the car actually moved, the conversation changed completely. Now, the focus was on what happens next. If a car this advanced could be brought back to life outside the factory, then what does that mean for future high-end car repair? This moment is important because it highlights the core tension in modern automotive technology. On one side, there's the idea of repair, creativity, and rebuilding something that was damaged. On the other side, there's a reality of advanced systems, locked software and manufacturer-controlled ecosystems that are not always designed to be opened or modified freely. The Bugatti project sits right in the middle of this conflict. It shows both the potential and the limitations of modern rebuilding. Even when everything looks perfect from the outside, there are still hidden systems that determine whether the car is truly finished or not. This is why the Bugatti Chiron Per Sport build became one of the most talked about moments in the entire journey. It was not just about fixing a rare car. It was about proving what is possible, challenging assumptions, and showing that modern automotive repair is no longer only mechanical. It is also digital controlled, and sometimes restricted in ways that make even the most skilled rebuilders face unexpected barriers. And this is exactly the point where the story moves forward into even more complex territory, where software locks and hybrid systems begin to define the next generation of rebuild challenges. After the Bugatti project pushed the limits of what people thought was possible in independent car rebuilding, the next phase of Matt Armstrong's journey moved into an even more complicated world, where the problem was no longer just mechanical damage or rare parts, but software control and modern, electronic systems that actively decide whether a car is allowed to function or not. This is where cars like the Lamborghini Revuelto enter the story, representing a completely new generation of vehicles that are built with hybrid powertrains, advanced computer systems, and safety protocols that can completely shut down the car after a crash. Unlike older cars where damage is mostly physical and visible, these modern machines can look perfectly repaired on the outside, but still refuse to operate because internal systems remain locked. The Lamborghini Revuelto is especially important in this discussion because it represents the direction supercars are heading. It is a V12 hybrid, combining traditional engine power with electric motors, creating extreme performance but also extreme complexity. In this type of system, everything is connected. The engine, batteries, sensors, and control units all communicate with each other constantly. This means that if one part of the system detects a serious issue, the entire car can go into protective mode. After a crash, this protection becomes even stronger, often resulting in a full system lock that prevents the vehicle from restarting until it is reset through manufacturer-level tools. This is where independent rebuilders face their biggest challenge, because even if every damaged physical part is replaced correctly, the car may still refuse to work in Matt's rebuild journey. This creates a completely new type of frustration and problem-solving process. At first, a damaged Revuelto might look like a standard salvage project, something that can be repaired and returned to working condition with time and effort. But very quickly, it becomes clear that this is not just a mechanical rebuild. It is a digital battle with systems that are designed to protect the car from unauthorized use after an accident. The car can appear complete, fully assembled, and visually perfect, but still remain inactive because its internal software has not been reset. This creates a strange situation where progress is visible but not functional, which is very different from older rebuild projects where fixing physical damage almost always leads directly to the car running again. This shift highlights a major theme in the modern automotive world. Cars are no longer just machines made of metal, bolts, and engines. They are now complex digital systems that rely heavily on software control. This means that repair is no longer just about skill with tools, but also about access to data, permissions, and manufacturer systems. In many cases, without official access, even highly skilled builders can reach a point where they cannot move forward, not because the damage is too difficult, but because the system itself does not allow it. This changes the meaning of rebuilding entirely, turning it into a process that is part engineering and part technological negotiation at the same time. Another major storyline in Matt's journey adds a different emotional layer to the content, which is the Marcus Rashford Rolls-Royce Wraith project. Unlike the extreme technical challenges of the Lamborghini or Bugatti builds, this project is more connected to story, emotion, and public interest. The car itself is already famous before the rebuild even begins, as it belongs to a well-known footballer and carries a history that people recognize. When a celebrity car is involved in an accident and later appears in a rebuild project, the audience response is very different. It is not just curiosity about the engineering, but also curiosity about the story behind the car and what happens to it next. The Rolls-Royce Wraith project becomes even more interesting when different parties start to get involved, including the original custom builders and people connected to the car's history. This adds another layer of complexity because now the rebuild is not just about technical repair, but also about ownership, identity, and restoration of something that already had a strong personality before the crash. When different groups show interest in the car's outcome, the project starts to feel less like a simple rebuild and more like a shared story that multiple people are connected to. This is very different from standard salvage projects where the builder has full control over the final result. Together, these two builds show how far the journey has evolved from its simple beginning. On one side, there's a highly technical world of modern hybrid supercars that challenge the very idea of independent repair. On the other side, there are emotionally charged projects where story, celebrity connection, and history matter just as much as mechanical restoration. This combination of technical difficulty and emotional storytelling is what defines a modern phase of Matt Armstrong's content, where every project is no longer just about fixing a car, but about understanding the deeper systems, stories, and limits that surround IT as the journey continues beyond the high-end supercars and celebrity-linked projects. It eventually comes back to something more grounded and relatable, which is a crashed BMW M3 that reportedly ended up hitting a house. This project is important because it brings the entire story back down to earth after the extreme complexity of Bugattis, Lamborghinis, and Rolls-Royces. The BMW M3 represents a different side of car rebuilding, where the focus is not on million-dollar exclusivity or global attention, but on real-world damage, everyday performance cars, and the kind of accidents that can happen to almost anyone. The G80 M3 is still a highly advanced machine, packed with modern electronics, sensors, and performance systems. But compared to hypercars, it feels more accessible and familiar. This makes it a perfect example of how modern repair challenges exist at every level of the automotive world, not just at the top. When this M3 project begins, the damage immediately shows that it is not going to be a simple or quick fix. A car crashing into a house is not a minor incident. It usually means structural damage, alignment issues, and potential problems across multiple systems. In a modern car like the M3, this also includes electronic checks, sensor recalibration, and system resets that must all work correctly before the car can function properly again. Even though it is not a rare supercar, the complexity is still significant. This is an important reminder that modern vehicles, even everyday performance cars, are far more advanced than older generations of cars. What used to be a straightforward mechanical repair has now become a combination of mechanical work and electronic troubleshooting. The reaction to this project is also different compared to the exotic builds. Some viewers question whether it is worth rebuilding a car like this, especially when it has a salvage history and significant damage. Others are less concerned about the financial or resale value and are more interested in the process itself. They enjoy watching problem solving, the step-by-step progress, and the challenge of bringing something broken back into working condition. This difference in opinion highlights one of the key themes in the entire journey. Not every rebuild needs to be rare or expensive to be interesting. Sometimes the process itself is enough to keep people engaged, especially when it's shown in a clear and honest way that connects the early simple projects, like the Audi TT. With a much more advanced and in many ways, the BMW M3 sits in the middle of the entire timeline of builds. It complicated supercar rebuilds that came later. It shows that the same core idea still applies no matter the price or status of the car. A damaged vehicle is still a problem that needs solving, and a rebuild is still a process of patience, skill, and persistence. What changes over time is not the basic idea, but the complexity of the systems involved and the level of attention each project receives. This makes the M3 an important reference point in understanding how far the journey has come. When all these projects are looked at together, a clear picture begins to form. From a small Audi TT repair done after long working hours, to multi-million-dollar Bugatti controversies, to software-locked hybrid supercars and emotionally charged celebrity builds, the journey shows a complete evolution of modern car rebuilding content. It is no longer just about fixing broken vehicles. It has become a reflection of how cars themselves have changed, how technology has added new barriers, and how storytelling has become just as important as engineering. Each build represents a different layer of this transformation, whether it is mechanical challenge, digital restriction, or emotional connection. In the end, what makes this entire story engaging is not just the cars themselves, but the journey behind them. It is about persistence, learning, and adapting problems that keep getting more complex with each project. It is also about how one simple decision, started with a crashed Audi TT, slowly evolved into a global content style that blends engineering, storytelling, and real-life problem-solving. And as the automotive world continues to evolve, the challenges in future builds will likely become even more advanced, not just in terms of damage, but in terms of software, access, and control. This means the story is still far from over, and the next chapter will likely push the boundaries even further than before. When you look back at the entire journey from the first Audi TT rebuild to most complex modern supercar projects, it becomes clear that this is no longer just a story about fixing damaged cars. It is a story about how the entire world of automotive repair has changed in front of our eyes. What once started as a simple idea, buy a broken car, fix it, and bring it back to life, has now turned into something far more complex, where success is not only defined by mechanical skill, but also by understanding software systems, manufacturer restrictions, and digital security layers built into modern vehicles. Every new project adds another layer of difficulty, and every success raises a new question about what is even possible anymore. At the same time, this journey also shows something deeper about persistence and human curiosity. No matter how advanced the technology becomes, there is still a strong desire to rebuild, repair, and restore things that are considered lost or finished. That mindset is what drives every project forward, even when the challenges seem too big or too technical to overcome. Whether it's a small damaged car or a multi-million-dollar hypercar, the same idea remains at the center of everything. Trying to bring something broken back to life using knowledge, effort, and patience. And perhaps the most interesting part of all is that this story is still not finished. With every new generation of cars becoming more digital, more locked down, and more controlled by manufacturers, the future of rebuilding is heading into unknown territory. What happens when physical repair is no longer enough? What happens when software decides the fate of a car more than mechanics do? These are the questions that will shape the next chapter of this journey. And as long as there are damaged cars and people willing to rebuild them, this story will keep evolving one project at a time.